Hey everybody, welcome to Houdini Hangout. My name's Peter. I'm the host of the stream, and just want to welcome you to another weekly hangout here. So yeah, thanks for joining. Thanks for being a part of the community and tuning in to the live stream tonight, or maybe you're watching it after the fact. And if so, thanks for watching on YouTube or. I think that's probably the only option you can really do here. Maybe Twitch has it saved for a little bit, but yeah. Anyways, welcome. Hello. Hey, Tolia. Hey, Zach. Welcome everybody. Hope everybody's having a great day, evening, night, morning, whatever time it is for you. Hope it's going well. Hey, S7. I don't know how to say the rest of that. Hey, Rosie. Welcome. Nice to have you. Very nice to have you here. Yeah, so this evening, I figured I would give a little glimpse into something that I was actually working on. It's funny, like I've been kind of doing a lot of stuff for work, a lot of Houdini stuff, so I figured I'd maybe talk about it again. Not that I don't normally do Houdini stuff for work, but it's been more interesting stuff after we launched a new curriculum thing for secondary schools, which was fairly basic. It was for secondary, for high school students and people that are just starting out their Houdini journey. So I was working on that like a lot of the second half of last year. So that released just maybe a month ago, roughly now, September. Yeah. But yeah, so now I'm kind of back in doing some workshops and things like that, and coming up with some different content to walk people through, and was asked about HDAs and have been getting into it a little bit. And I thought this would be kind of a neat thing to talk a little bit about. HDAs are always, kind of a neat idea. And like, I guess mostly what we're going to do is kind of work on the guts of it, not so much the like user interface side of things, but like something that is kind of how I would go about building some sort of an HDA that might, you might have, like in this case, I wanted to take some assets and ultimately wanted them to be in Unreal and have these assets in an engine and be able to like have it in a real-time environment. But obviously the first step for that is just building the HDA, right? So it's all Houdini in that case. And then looking at that and seeing how, when you're given something that is a pre-built asset, right? Like maybe of a pack of trees or a pack of pipes or, building assets or whatever. How do you go about taking that and building something out of it, right? Like building something that's, robust enough to be able to handle the different assets, but also just the logic behind it, right? Because it actually can be a pretty tricky problem to solve. One time I had to take a bunch of kit bash buildings and put those into a street grid basically. And when you have known assets and an unknown, plot of land, let's just say that you're about to place those into an unknown area that you wanted to place those into, can actually be quite tricky to figure out a decent algorithm to be able to kind of place those and work with them. That was a much longer and harder process to deal with. This is a little bit simpler. And basically we just have pieces of a wall, and we want to have some sort of a logic that can dictate that. And in some ways, what you can do is you can limit the pieces that you're working with so that it's not so much of a, an insane puzzle, and then kind of build it up from there and build features and implement different things into it. It's often best to kind of take it step by step, right? And kind of take a first stab at something, see how that works, then maybe implement some more, interesting features to it and continue along in that way. So that's what I figured we could talk about tonight. I thought it'd be kind of an interesting thing to talk about. And it's not really like a a set outcome that we're looking to achieve. It's a little bit more of just walking through the steps of how you might go about doing this, and at least how I went about doing it. And I'll be curious to hear your feedback along the way on how maybe we could do that even better. And that leads me to my standard kind of spiel at the beginning of these streams. Is just that if you have any comments or questions or anything like that, please feel free to drop your comments in the chat. Always interested to hear other people's approach to things. This is just my, kind of how I've thought about this. So if you have any thoughts or ideas or any suggestions along the way, questions, if you have a question, probably somebody else does as well. So it's always great to have those questions asked live so that we can kind of address them and change things if I'm doing something in a dumb way. Always happy to have that kind of real-time feedback into what it is that we're working on here. So always interested in hearing your comments and questions and suggestions and anything in between. So so that's the idea. That's kind of what we're going to be working on this evening. And hopefully we'll get something kind of cool set up here. I think we should be able to do it in the time allotted. Hopefully I won't be hopefully I won't hit any crazy roadblocks. I did this fairly quickly for what I had already set up. So hopefully it'll be even quicker this time. So let's just dive in and start, messing around with some stuff here. That's funny. I thought I hit the button and then it didn't transition over. All right. So the first thing that we should probably take a look at is what assets we're going to be working with. And I found, hey, Sprawa, welcome. Oh, that was a kind of a mouthful. These are the assets that I found. And basically what I'm going to work with first is going to be just a few of these straight wall pieces here and this kind of hub, kind of towery looking thing. And so I'm just going to download this. This is an FBX file. This is on Polyhaven. I'm just going to download it. And we'll use this asset. I'll save this to my drive. Actually, there we go. Here. Thought I saved that. Oh, it's just a zip. That's why it's not showing up. X, and there we go. Great. All right. So yeah, we're going to use this. Within Unreal, I actually kind of found that the GLTF seemed like it imported a little bit more nicely. I don't know too much about that format, not super familiar with it, but seemed like it worked a little bit better, and I was able to get some of the orientations from those a little bit easier that way. So that's what I ended up. I kind of downloaded them both, but for this, we'll just use the FBXs. That should be more than enough. I do have this saved. Okay, cool. So let's just go inside here. We're just going to call this Miami Castle Wall Builder, something like that. And we'll jump inside. And so first of all, we need to obviously do a file node. So we'll drop that down. And I'm going to grab this FBX in here. And it's not unzipped. So that's something I should do, is unzip it first. Let's see. There. And we will unzip it. Great. I think if I refresh that, there we go. All right. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So there's our modular walls here. I think the pieces that I'm mainly going to work with are going to be this wall here, these thin walls here. So I think we're going to go with these pieces here. So it's going to just kind of limit our scope a little bit and allow us to be able to think about this in a bit more of a manner, kind of a measured approach to the problem. And cool. Hey, wow, that's cool. I'm glad you're excited about some procedural assets. And hello, Brain Grapes, welcome. So that's how I'm going to kind of approach this, is that we have all of these cool pieces here, right? And we could start thinking about like, oh, how do I have this kind of crazy corner implemented? Oh, that's interesting. How would that be a part of this? And like, oh, this is interesting. Like maybe is that like a 45-degree angle? Yeah, maybe something like that. These 90s are kind of cool, inside and outside 90s. This thin to thick structure here is kind of cool. But I think instead of going down a route like that, I think it can be better to, like I said, take a measured approach and just say, okay, let's first get some of the basics down, like the corners, like maybe we want those towers at the corners, and then we'll go with just straight walls in between and just kind of work from there and kind of build it up. So that's how we're going to kind of approach this. So the first thing, obviously, I think we can tell from this geometry is that we need to do something to this to manipulate it, to make it, work in a way that's a bit more flexible for us. Luckily, there is, within this FBX file, there are actually some scale, translation, rotation information in here that we can actually pull out, which will be really helpful. And obviously we have our name attribute in here as well. So if we go in here and do our name, we can see that each of these pieces are named differently. Now, one of the really interesting things is these pieces are actually named separately. So that's certainly, if you want to implement these as, in the future, or do something, continue along with playing around with this, that would be really tricky because those are two separate pieces that are one. Basically, they nest together. So I don't know why that's built that way. It seems a little strange, maybe. I don't know. It seems a little bit much, but with the walkway, maybe it's so that if you want to take the walkway off, you can. But because if you look here, these are actually walkways that would butt up against these. So anyways, those are each of the different pieces. So whenever I see a piece of geometry like this, I kind of think, well, probably what we're going to have is some sort of for each loop, right? That's going to be pretty much the most standard way of going about this. So what I'm going to do is do a for each loop, get these all into the correct place, and then we can go from there. Then we'll have all of our assets kind of at the origin and set up in a way that we want. Now, the one thing that's interesting about these assets is that they're each piece doesn't actually have its pivot at the kind of centroid of the geometry, or even the centroid on like the ground plane. It's often at this like kind of right side point. And I actually found this out when I was messing around with it in Unreal. And now, granted, you could go through and process these assets and make it better for you and save them back out and do all that kind of stuff. But I was kind of just wanting to do this from like all right, let's do as minimal modifying and resaving of assets and that type of thing. Look, let's just take some assets and go from there and kind of play around with it and see what we can get up to. This again was for a workshop, so I wasn't wanting to have like, we're going to do 20 steps to get these assets perfectly set up. I just kind of wanted to go with them as is. So one thing you'll notice is that this is gigantic. It's like 3,000 meters in each direction, and that's like a couple kilometers. So that's not right. So let's do this. Let's transform it down. I think 0.01 is probably about right. And yeah, that felt about right to me. That puts this wall at a couple meters thick. That seems fairly reasonable. I don't know. Probably a little bit thick, but whatever. It seems like that's a more reasonable scale for us to be working at. And I think when importing this into Unreal, that was more or less the scale that they were coming in at. So that should get us to the a much more appropriate point. And you might be saying, well, hold on a second. There is an FBX, a Labs FBX import that's really cool. And this is actually really nice as well. But if we take this and bring this in, this will open it and do all that stuff. And we can actually convert the units in here as well. I think if we reload it, that'll do it maybe. Yeah, there we go. So now we have the same scale, right? So you could have just done this all in one thing. However, one interesting thing that this doesn't seem to, doesn't really have for us is the ability to get those. Yeah, there we go. Hello. Hey, Shooting Blind, welcome. Yeah, so it doesn't actually have these FBX attributes, and that's going to be incredibly helpful for us because otherwise we're kind of just shooting in the dark with trying to line these assets up. And this FBX translation will be super key to making this all work. So that's why I didn't go with this and just went with a straight file import. So anyways, take it for what it's worth. I mean, in this case, it seems to be a better option. Not necessary, but anyways. So let's do a for each named piece, named primitive, sorry. And this is a way to just basically have it preset to use the piece attribute name to loop over. So now we're going to have 22 pieces that we're going to loop over within this, within just the geometry that we've imported here. So if we look here, really nothing has changed. We've done 22 loops and it's in the exact same spot. So what we need to do is we need to take these pieces and place them, at the origin basically. So, or at their pivot. They put their pivot to the origin is what I should say. And so, so that's what we can do with these attributes. If we look here, there we go. We've got the FBX rotation, scale, translation. We don't, I'm not going to, well, I guess what we could also do is we could do the scale through that as well, because if we invert this translation and the scale, that should actually bring it back to our world units, if I'm thinking about that correctly. So actually, let's try that. That actually might have been what I did before anyways. So let's just give that a shot. So I just did a point VOP, and oh, sorry. Actually, what I did was I brought this into a... No, yep, this will work. So I think I just brought in a point VOP. Sorry, nope, actually I did a detail VOP. Just trying to remember, just thinking through this here. There'll be probably a lot of this where I'm like thinking and let's see here. Oh, oh boy, getting questions about the Technicolor mill thing. Do I think that the industry is going in a small boutique studio direction? No, I mean, personally, I think that the idea of a VFX studio as a way to please investors is not a smart idea. There's not a lot of margins in that industry currently. And so thinking of it as a way to like pad people's pockets is very short-sighted and doesn't really work. I think if you're building a business that doesn't have to have growth year on year just to please your investors, I think that is a much more feasible business model to have than, I mean, I think in general, but that's just me and my worldviews. So yeah, so it is a can of worms, but certainly an interesting one. But I'm not super worried. I mean, the mill has already stated that they're going to be restructuring as another company, basically. So while the mill is closed, there will be something that comes out of that, and a lot of that talent will be retained there. So, yeah, while one thing falls, another thing will probably rise, because it doesn't mean any less work is going to be done out there. So I think maybe just a company that got too big for its britches and just couldn't keep up with what their investors wanted, which I think is never possible. So ultimately, it's the fate of any publicly owned company, in my opinion. But anyways, back to Houdini. So instead of doing this, I think what would be better is just to do an attribute promote, because then we can just work on these at the detail level. We only need the one translation. We don't need to move it all simultaneously. So we're going to do a point to detail. We're going to take the FBX rotation, scale, and translation, move it up there. Actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking of this, I just want to double check to make sure that that wasn't actually how they did that here. So let me just double check that, because that would have been a logical thing. I don't know if that's what they did over here, but oops. Copy, not cut. No, okay. I just wasn't sure. I thought maybe they could have put it up at the detail, but does not seem to be the case. Anyways, all right. So let's see. So now we've got these at the detail level. We've got those set up there. So now in a detail VOP, we can just do some really simple stuff. So what I'm going to do is create, let's see, there's a transform. I think it's just this one is what I need. No, that's the wrong one. Transform. Sorry, my phone is buzzing and I did not mute it. There and there. Okay. I think just here, make transform. There we go. That's what I wanted. So here we can just input translation, rotation, scale, shear, pivot, blah, 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 and make a 4x4 transform matrix. So that's something really easy to use to be able to transform our geometry. So what we can just do is just do a bind here, and we can grab the, let's do FBX translation, and that's a vector. Put that into translation. We'll make another one of these. Sorry, I had a little raspiness in my throat there. And let's do the FBX scale. I'll put that into scale. Now we don't actually need this rotation. I actually found that the rotation was a little weird and it didn't seem to be right. Like, unless maybe this was in radians, which it could possibly be, but I'm just going to leave it as it is because it seemed like the rotation didn't need to happen. So we'll just do that. And then we have a transform here. If we do a bind export. Yeah, VFX studios are just contractors. Exactly. I worked in a really small studio. It was a great experience, honestly. Got really well taken care of. My boss was a former editor, and so he knew like how production was. And we worked in the advertising industry, and I mean, most nights I could leave at 5-ish, and nobody would think twice about it. So it's a pretty nice work environment, I have to say. So small studios aren't the worst thing in the world. Definitely have less resources, but it is pretty fun, and it's a nice environment and like family type thing. I still go and have lunch with them sometimes, which they're really awesome guys. So. I do my best to mute whenever I'm taking a sip of anything, just because I know some people have some mouth sound issues. So hopefully that will alleviate that. All right, so we need to do an X form from this, and I mean we could have done this in a Vex as well. I mean, there's no reason that this couldn't have been. And I'm just gonna explicitly say this is a matrix, which is where right there. And that should work. That should give us a matrix here, transform matrix. And we can see right there, there's our transformation matrix. And so then if we do a transform by attribute, this should now look at the X form. And if we invert this, we should have our geometry transformed. And like I said, these pieces are actually lined up in a kind of odd way. You can see where 0, 0, 0 is kind of landing here. So this pivot is actually this one corner, which actually is the front corner of it in the negative X axis, I guess. Like if you were thinking of it from like the positive is to the right. So this is the negative corner of it, I guess. So yeah, it's kind of a weird setup, but this is how you would orient it in any other software. So I wanted to make sure that I was being true to how the geometry was actually done. And if we come down to the end here, you can see that these pieces are all now oriented in that way. This kind of tower piece is actually in the center, which was helpful. If we do a blast here, and if we take that piece out, you can kind of get a sense for the rest of the pieces here. So let's do a select. We'll select by the name attribute, and we'll select that. And you can see here, this is exactly what the pieces look like. And I was actually, this looks like an absolute mess, but when I did the exact same thing in Unreal and loaded them in, it was in this exact shape. Even this little like bit was sticking out down here. So I was like, perfect. I know that my geometry is like exactly aligned with how other softwares are importing those origins if we basically go back to that origin setup. So everything's looking good there. And I was happy with that setup. So now these pieces are all kind of grouped and organized in that way. The other thing that probably would make sense here is to pack these. And so we could probably actually do that just with an assemble here. And if we pack them by, I think they'll be packed by their name. Nope, I don't want to create a name attribute. Yep. And we want to create packed primitives. And we're going to transfer the name attribute along. Actually, do we even need to transfer that? I don't think so. Yeah, there we go. So we've got our name here. So these are the names for each of the pieces. And yeah, that should work. And yeah, we want to make sure that the pivot location is actually at the origin, which is going to be, it's going to be important to be able to do it, because we want the pivot to be here, right where we've centered these all to. So that's going to be really, really helpful. And then from there, let's see, I think, yeah. So let's now kind of create, so we've got our geometry set up here, and that's fine. It's going fine. I believe, yeah, so that should be good. Let's make a curve now that we can kind of play around with here and start to get some sense for how this might start to work. So let's grab a curve. So let's do a curve. Yeah, just a regular curve will be fine because I don't want it to be a Bezier. I just want to do some straight line segments. And I'm going to hide that. Don't need that up. Yep, there we go. Last unrelated question. Do I ever think that Houdini will ever have real-time, less accurate sims like Embergen? I mean, I don't think it's out of the question. I think, what we do is I think what the development team does is looks at what the needs of our clients are and tries to best suit those. And if we feel like there's needs that are being met by a tool like that, we'd probably develop it. So, I mean, I don't think there's anything fundamentally opposed to it in Houdini. I think we definitely pride ourselves in having really good simulation tools and like fairly accurate simulation tools and ones that can be kind of produced at scale. Embergen, it seems like a really popular thing. So, I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't be something that the development team would look at more seriously. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's certainly a possibility. Okay. So let's just draw kind of a rough shape here. Yeah, exactly. It's not production quality. Yeah, exactly. You're not going to be doing super large scale stuff with it. Although I did see a really nice, what was it? It was like a piece with like, it almost looked like Bikini Atoll, like 50s nuclear testing things where there was like boats on the water and they were doing these like underwater explosions and stuff. That looked pretty cool. I don't really know, like it looked good. I don't know, like I didn't like really take time to investigate that, but I think that was done with Embergen, which was kind of cool. But again, I only saw it in passing and was like just kind of like, oh, that's interesting. That looks pretty good. So yeah, I know they take a lot of shortcuts in order to get the speed up there, but yeah, it's certainly an interesting thing. All right, so let's make a little wall here. We'll just kind of do something like this maybe, and yeah, I don't know. That's fine. Something like that, maybe. There's a little wall, right? So this will be our fort shape. And I think what we're going to, like the main thing that I'm going to do first, only in one angle. Interesting. Yeah, I've never messed with it ever. So I have very little to like actually say about it. I just know what people have talked about. Is it like one of those perspective things where like if you're like looking at a projection or a billboard or something like a virtual thing, if you get off axis, like the perspective illusion falls apart, like one of those kind of things? That's funny. Okay, so in a case like this, I think what we're going to do is let's do a copy to points here. And we can actually copy this geometry to the points on this curve, right? So we've got, 6 points here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a blast here and just select this. Now, if we were making this as an HDA, you would probably promote this up to be like this is the corner geometry or something, something to that effect. And right now I'm not like thinking too much about the UI side of it. I'm thinking more of just like the usability and like user side of it. So, all right, so let's blast out from the points. Let's blast out. Hello, what's going on there? Okay. Let's see here. I'm going to select it again, and we're going to select by name. Let's see if we can just select. Oh, interesting. We'll just do this one here. Hit enter. And we'll delete the non-selected ones, and that'll just give us this tower shape, this modular Fort 1 tower round. So we copy this in here. Yep, now we've got these all sitting like this, and these are going to be obviously in the wrong axis. So what we need to do is we need to add a normal to this, and so we can do a. Just trying to think if there's any other thing I want to do with this. Yeah, we could do an orientation along curve actually, because that'll give us a couple interesting things. It'll give us this up and our normal. And so we can maybe use that a little bit later as well, because these normals will actually like kind of adjust the twist of it a little bit in some of these cases where it'll be kind of like at a maybe more interesting angle, and so it won't all be in the exact same orientation. So that's kind of cool because these normals are slightly off in different, axes and things like that. So they're a little bit adjusted. So that's kind of nice. And I think if we were to take this curve here and mess around with it, like if we took this, went like this and put this in edit mode and then grabbed our point here, just gonna turn the hit whoa, hello, what's going on there? That's interesting. What? That's very curious. So yeah, so if we take these and move them, you can see how these are adjusting a little bit there. So anyways, that is what it is. So let's do this. I'm just going to bring this out a little bit more just so we have a little bit more room there. Maybe I'll take this and move it along a little bit more just so these lines are a little bit longer, so there's not like too short of a space there, just so these pieces have a little bit more room to kind of exist. So yeah, so there we go. These are working. These are going to be the shape we want. And I think this starts to kind of help us think about how we might do some of the logic here, right? Because if we have lines in this case, right, that are, let's just do a convert line here. If we have lines like this, right, and we have these geometries that are going to be existing on each of these corner points, or any geometry that's existing on the corner point, doesn't really matter what it is. And each of these pieces here are oriented so that their pivot is at the origin. That means that they're all pointing kind of in one direction, right? And if we look at these, I believe they're slanted away. Yeah, so their front edge is this side here. So we need to be going, I want to say counterclockwise with these, because we want to stack them all up one after another, starting, and this like right here, kind of like this. Sorry, I'm going to change over here. So we want to have one start here and then move a little bit more and then have another one start there, and then it goes that direction, then another one starts, right? So however we have that set up. So we want to go counterclockwise around it. So that's an important thing to think about, because if you rotate it, you can't just rotate 180 degrees if it's in the wrong direction, because that would actually get it off, kind of off track. So we want to have it to be going the right direction around. And another thing too is, like I was saying, we don't want these pieces to start necessarily right here. I mean, there's going to be some overlap with these, like if we have the piece start here, but we want to have some control over where these start. So that was kind of the first thing that I was playing around with, was like, okay, we want to be able to actually like Boolean these and get a trimmed curve that we can actually work with. So Yeah, you could measure the wall asset and distance, right, between the towers and then resample the curve. Yeah, that's kind of what we're going to do, except unless you have a suggestion for how to do that, with the resample, there's not really a way to tell it with varying distances how far those are going to be, because each of those pieces are a different width, right? If we go back to here, you can see that there's multiple widths for these. In fact, the width of this is different than the width of this. And I think these three are the same width, but this one isn't the same, and this one isn't the same, and these aren't the same. So there's a lot of different widths there. So you could, if they were all the same width, yes, you could certainly do that. Just resample it and call it a day, right? That would be fairly easy to do. But in this case, because they're all different widths, and we're going to have different pieces in there to kind of make this look visually interesting, we can't just say, oh, let's just blanket statement resample by this width. And so kind of what I thought would make sense is actually just have it randomly select these, right? So they're slightly randomized, and then march along the curve, or the line basically in this instance, and have it at a point where needed, right? So obviously the first starting point is going to be where the first piece goes, right? But then from there, each starting point is going to, is the starting point for each of those, or the origin for each of those pieces is going to be the end of the previous piece. So then we sample the width and go from there. Actually, that's one thing that I didn't do yet over here in this for each was measuring the width. And I did that. I found that an easy enough way to do that was with just like a bounds. Sorry, just enjoying my tea for a second there. So yeah, what I think I did here before, and move my phone out of the way, was I did a bound, and you can get this attribute here from the bound. Turn that off. And you can get the radii here, which is basically just a distance more or less just from the centroid of this. And then what I did was I just copied that back over. I mean, you could let's see here. Instead of doing that, I guess what we could do is do the calculation first. So we could do the bound, and then we could just take that. Let's do a detail wrangle. That should be easy enough to do. We'll just say v at size equals. Yeah, exactly. You need the modeling department. Exactly. That it would certainly be the case if you were working in a large department. That would be it. But like, this is kind of where that arbitrary sized geometry comes in, right? Where you have these arbitrary elements that you need to match, right? So yeah, for sure. In a real world, you would do something like that because it would be silly. But this is kind of a little workaround here. So, just as a example here, this size of this is 14 and 14.5626, and the bound is coming out at 7.2. So that should multiply by 2. So we'll just do this v at radii times 2. And that should give us our size attributes, 145627. Is that correct? 26 something. So yeah, it's more or less correct. Yep, that seems right. We're rounding a little there, but that should be fine. And yep, so that's great. And then what we could do as well is say, we could just give it a width as well. Equals v at size.x. I think this should work. Yep, there we go. So now we've got a width and a size that we can use. And then we can just do a copy, an attribute copy, put this over here, and we'll just copy those two attributes over onto this geometry. So we'll just do size and width, and now we should have those included with this as well. So we have a, actually I'm going to get rid of these FBX size property things. We don't need those. Just do an attribute delete. You can just do this kind of across the board. We can just do FBX star, get rid of those, and that should be fine. We've got a size and a width attribute. And so, oh, right. That was the other thing I needed to do. It actually is not good to do those at the detail level because you can only have one detail attribute per geometry. So what I actually wanted to do was transfer that over to bring that over to the primitive level so that it could actually be stored on the primitives. So we'll do an attribute promote there, and we will do that from detail to primitive. We'll say size and width, and that should go there. So now we've got those, great. And if we come over here, we should be able to delete those again. We shouldn't really have anything in there anymore, yep. And then if we go to assemble, those are gonna go away, but I believe we can transfer those over so we can do size and width and have those transfer across. So we still have those size and width attributes. And what I kind of thought would make sense of these pieces is to sort them by their width. So I'm going to do that as well. There's not really like a really strong reason why I was thinking to do that, but I just feel like it's going to make for a little bit of a just a cleaner thing, basically. So let's do that. Actually, that's interesting. Will that? I actually think I put it on my. Well, let me just see here. We'll sort by an attribute. The attribute's going to be width, and that will now sort it by width. I just want to make sure that that's actually putting the name as well. So let's just see here. Tower round was there. Let's see here. Walkway corner 2. Oh, interesting. Okay. Oh, so Zach is asking, are you promoting the FBX attributes to detail just for the VOP? Does it need to be a detail attribute? Yes, for the, well, maybe not for the, yeah, maybe it doesn't need to. Well, I was just thinking it would be cleaner to do it that way. I was thinking it needed it for the transform by attribute, but maybe it didn't. Maybe I could have just done that on the points and it would have been fine. Yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter. I was just doing it that way. Because then I could just do one. Yeah, I mean, it really doesn't matter. I guess I just overcomplicated it there. So I guess probably could have just done it at the, where was it at? Was it at the point level? Yeah, I think actually you could probably just do that. So if you did this and just got rid of this, and changed this to points. Yeah, it seems like it's doing the exact same thing. Yeah, it would be fine. So yeah, you don't need to actually do that. So that's kind of okay. The only thing here is, nope, that should all work still because this is the radii, size, width, copy the attributes over, promote them to the primitive. Yeah, yep, no, that would work. That would work too. So no, there's no reason to do that. I just did that because I'm always think of the most complicated ways of doing things. So yeah, there was really no reason to do that. I was thinking it would help something, but no, it's not doing anything. No, it's just making my brain think that it's the right way of doing it. I don't know. I just overcomplicate everything. So yeah, nope, no reason. Okay, so this is interesting here. And I think what I did was I actually I'm a little surprised by that sorting the primitives doesn't sort the points, I guess. Maybe the other way would be true, though. If I sorted the points, it would sort the primitives. So that makes me think that I should change around how I'm doing this. So let me just think here for a second. Maybe we put those onto the points there. We're going to attribute delete a different thing here, which these are going to be a point attribute now. So if we do size and width, if we assemble size and width name. Okay, let's take name out of there. Okay, so if we do that, and then we sort, no change by attribute here, width. Okay, I think that's going to be right, and that's going to be what we want, because now we actually have these sorted by width properly. Everything's great. So now we have these sort of organized. You can see that the widths are there. They're, you know, fairly, you know, whatever, reasonably similar for some of them. I mean, they're within tenth, hundredth, like a 10,000th of a meter. So they're pretty close. So anyways, yeah, great. So that should work. We're going to do something with this in a second to kind of create a dictionary that we can use, which is kind of a neat type of attribute that I think could be is sort of helpful to at least kind of keep things linked together. But before we get to that, let's do the convert line thing here a little bit more and trim these lines. So what I did before, or at least the idea I had, was we have these geometries here, right? And if we're going to mainly be using these towers as the corner. Now, if you changed how you were doing this, you would have to change the way that you're doing the Boolean. And you could do it with the geometry itself. I kind of thought what would be nice would be to slightly change that and do it with the tube, but I guess we really don't have to. We could do it with the geometry itself. So what we could do is we could take this copied points here and let's do this. Let's bring this down here. We've now got these converted to lines. And if we look at these here, okay, got those. Let's look at the points here. Yeah. And these should each, the one thing that happens with this convert to line is that it actually separates each of these into a separate primitive for each of these, whereas up here it would just be one primitive. And pretty sure actually, I actually wonder if we could do this real quick. Well, that's fine. This is fine. This will work just fine. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn off this compute length because I'm going to use that a little bit later and I want to use the rest length for something. But for right now, we're just going to leave that as it is. Okay, so this is going to convert into lines. We're going to take these, we're going to trim them. So let's do this. We're going to do a Boolean. We're going to use this labs Boolean curve. I find this to be really helpful. We can take a poly curve here. We can take a cutting surface and we can Boolean them. However, why is it not working? So what I found was that if you have a piece of geometry like this that literally just has 2 points, it gets a little funky. I'm curious if this, I didn't have this on my other one, but let me just, let me look at this AE curve Boolean. I wonder if that is from the AE lib. I wonder if this will work or not. So let's do this. Oh, I actually know why it wouldn't work anyways, but, okay, so there's a couple things that need to happen here. First of all, we're trying to cut it with geometry that's not closed, which I think is problematic anyways. So let's adjust our geometry a little bit here. We know that this is going to be something that we actually use eventually, so we'll just say null, we'll just say corner pieces, maybe something like that. And we know that that's going to be useful. So we need to adjust this here. So let's do a polyfill here. And that should, oh, right. We also need to unpack it because this is a packed geometry. So let's unpack it. Let's throw that in there, see if that helps. Nope. It's trying to do something with it, but it's definitely not happy. So here's our polyfill. Let's just do a triangle fan in the bottom and turn off the deform patch so that it's flat regardless. I don't think that's going to be enough to make this work. No, it is not. And let's also do this. Let's do a match size here. And we'll do this justify Y minimum, but then offset it down just a little bit. So it's, I don't know, maybe, sure, 0.65 down. That seems fine-ish. That's interesting. Wait, why did that? Oh, right. No, that doesn't work. Right, because I did this differently. I did another copy to points. That's what I did. So, right. So instead of doing this, we should have this go, have this go to the blast. So now this is unpacking one of them. It's polyfilling it and matching size like so. And then we're going to do another copy to points down here with this as the geometry and that as the input. And let's just slide these over a little bit here like so. So we've got these curves. We're doing the copy to points. There we go. Let's just see if this works. I don't think it will. It's sort of working, but sort of not. So there's definitely some problems with this. And so both of these are going to have relatively the same problem, I think. This one just doesn't have anything. And this is what I used before, the labs Boolean curve. This is kind of interesting. I do wonder if this would eventually work for anything. It is cutting one of them, but sort of oddly. So let's do this. Let's do a resample here. And that did fix this one. Yes. Great. So this will actually fix both of these, which is really interesting. So it looks like you could use either of these if you wanted to. I'm just going to go with the labs Boolean because that's something that you're more likely to have. So I'm just going to do that. And so, oh, I don't have my little screen thing on here. Let's see. Boop, there we go. Okay. So now we have these trimmed. And this is more so what I'm thinking, right? We needed this length to be cut between these because that's the actual length that we're going to be dealing with. So, so we've got this now, but we've got a bunch of points here, and this really won't be super helpful for us. In fact, I'm going to turn this up. I think we could do it to like 1. Yeah, that's fine. This is going to be a little tricky because really we want to only have a few points that we add in here instead of like having like dozens and dozens of points, because each of these pieces is going to be copied to these points. And what I was eventually thinking of doing is outputting a point cloud to Unreal, and then that would be what would pick it up, and you'd write an attribute on there and it would find the instance in Unreal and basically just attach it right there. So having all these extra points is just, we're just going to eventually get rid of them. So they're not really very useful. So that's something we got to fix. But this is working. We've got these curves. Now the other thing that would be good to do would be to transform this. So let's do this. Let's put a transform down right after the unpack. And this is going to allow us to scale this down a little bit because we actually don't want these curves to be, let's look at this one over here because this is the actual geometry. We don't want these curves to start at the very edge of it. We want them to go inside a little bit. So I think if we bring this down a little bit, you'll obviously see that this will now kind of essentially be an offset for how scaled out these are from the center there, right? So we can have these trim equally. And now obviously we're doing this based on based on this one piece of geometry, and yeah, it should work out just fine to be able to kind of scale it up and down. Now what I did in mine was actually did this, had a tube fit to this and just kind of scale it from there. It's a little bit maybe cleaner, but you could do it this way too. I guess either way should work. Now you could run into some issues if you scale this way down, because then it's actually going to be cutting from maybe this surface instead of be cutting from this surface instead of down here, because we have a little bit of an offset there for it. But I think what I found is I did it to like 0.85, and that was a fairly decent starting point because you're inside this a little bit, and that's kind of past the starting point of this. Like if you kind of draw a line straight up and down here, that's kind of enough. We can always adjust that later. Shouldn't really be a huge issue, but that is something that we can do there. Okay, so we've got this Boolean curve going on here. Let's just bring this up a little bit. Cool. Okay. So now what we need to do is need to remove those inline points. So I'm pretty sure we have a remove inline points. Yep. It's actually a facet SOP with remove inline points on. So that's kind of always an interesting, like, oh yeah, I didn't remember that. And so we want this to go not clockwise like this. We want it to go counterclockwise. And so one of the things that I kind of realized in doing this was that when you have, let's see here. Let's actually try this. This actually might work. If I resample it first, does this do what I want it to do? Maybe. And then we convert it to a line. Resample, convert line. Now it's not removing the inline points. That's, oh, right. Because, right, that won't work because now we've converted this to a line and each of these little pieces is its own primitive. So that's not going to work. We want this to be resampled with this. So one thing that I noticed that was kind of funky about this was that this last one here, when you resample it after you've converted to a line, it actually goes in the opposite direction. If you look here, this is an easier way to see it because it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then 11, and then 10. Because this here, when we're done the convert line, is actually 0.0 and 0.5. And those are the 2 points on that line. Then when you resample it, it's actually going in this direction because this is going upwards for it. So the numbers count up from here. So this one turns out to be 0, once you've done this Boolean, and now you've got points that are counting up this direction. And so, yeah, so it causes a little bit of an issue there. So what I found was helpful in this was creating an index for these. So if I do a enumerate here, drop that down, and I found that this having an index here was really helpful because I could then say if the index is equal to the same number, say you have six primitives total, and you do n minus one primitive, and it matches the index that matches that, then you can reverse that. You can reverse the points on that one, and that ends up fixing that later down the line, because when you try to solve that or get the up and the orientation, all that stuff from it gets a little wonky. So that was just something that was a little fixed there. There might be a cleaner way of doing that, but that was my solve. The other thing that I'm just noticing now too is we want this to go, if I'm remembering correctly, counterclockwise, because they each come off and we want them to go counterclockwise. So if we do that, if we do a sort here, maybe let's do a sort and just reverse this. What does that do for us? Nothing. Okay. So I think no, it doesn't do it. So oh, that's weird. So I think what we actually want to do maybe is do a reverse like this. Let's check that out. Yep. That seems to do it. 0, 1. And then if we do a reverse point sort, like so, and just reverse the point sort. Got to change my display flag. Okay, I think that'll do it. Let's see. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, interesting. This one is still backwards, but it has an oops. What's its index? Let me just look at that real quick. Throw the index on. Control click that, and we'll just do a marker 0. Okay. All right. So then we just have to do the 0th index and just sort. That's actually really easy then. That's good. That's really good because we want to start with the first. Yeah, that'll be good. So let's just do that. I'm not sure about this. Let's see. Let's do an orientation along curve. We'll do the same thing we did on the other thing. And we've got N and up. And let's just visualize those so we can see them. N and up. And I'm going to color those. And I'm going to make blue and up. I'm going to make green. Okay, yeah, those are still backwards. So let's do this. Let's just do a switch and just take that, or sorry, split. Just take that one. We'll just say primitive 0 because it'll always be the 0 primitive. And we'll just do the same thing we did here, I think. Reverse it and reverse the point sort on it. That seems to do the trick. And then we can just merge these two back together. Got the up pointing up, the normal facing along these, which seems to be exactly right. That's what we're looking for. Yes, and it's going counterclockwise. That should work just fine. Okay. Great, great, great. Looks like we're getting somewhere here. So we've got each of those curves set up. Looking good. And yeah, that seems great. So now we should have our very first point here set up in the right location. Let's take a look at these corner pieces. Yep, there we go. That's great. That's looking pretty good. So why don't we just try something here real quick? And I'm just going to take one of these. I'm going to do something similar to what I did here. Just going to select that. And we're just going to grab a different named piece. And why don't we take the wall thin straight. Let's just do this one here. And now we should just have one straight piece like that. And if we do a copy to points, now this is going to not be exactly right, but at least the first point will be correct. And we can kind of take a look at what is going on there. So, oh, I've got that backwards, like so. There we go. Okay, yep. And so that's right. So the interesting thing about that is that its orientation is 90 degrees off. And what I found did the trick for that was doing we could do this really simple. We could do labs, instance attributes. This actually works pretty well. And we can just take this here and we can actually now see these nice little boxes, which is kind of cool. We're not going to be doing any variant stuff here. And we're not going to be putting an instance path in there because I think that adds that attribute. So with the point transforms, what we can do is we can do a 90-degree spin in the y-axis, I believe. We can actually see what that does. And if we turn this on, we should be able to see, oh yeah, negative 90 is what we want. There we go. Okay, so we're starting to get what we want here. We've got this slant from this this working properly. It's kind of facing outwards, which is good. That makes sense. Now this one obviously isn't right, but this will be where we put the first piece, right? So that's going to be helpful for us. And now the only thing I am seeing is that this has a little bit of a gap here. So let's just tweak that real quick before we go any further. We can just say 0.8, and there we go. Now it's just slightly inside like that, and that'll probably look a lot nicer. Cool. All right, so we've got each of these first points look like the orientations are correct, so that's really good. And then from there, we can kind of just continue down each of these primitives. What would actually be really helpful, I think, for us is, because we're going to be making a bunch of points here, like new points, and instead of, we'll have to think about this a little bit, but instead of having the normal and the up on the saved on the pieces themselves, maybe in between something like this, promoting it up to the primitive so that it can live there, and then we can promote it back down to every new point that we create is probably a better solution overall, just to make this process a little bit quicker. So I think what I'm going to do for right now is actually, since we know that this is working, and if we unpromote, bring that back down to the point attribute, it'll be fine. So right now, this was just kind of a quick check for this. So I'm just going to get rid of this, and I'm going to get rid of this because that's not correct anymore. And this we know we're going to use a little bit later, so we don't need to worry too much about that. But let's just do an attribute promote. And this is kind of one of those things where we're just moving attributes around to keep them for later and store them in a little bit more of a more useful spot for us. So in this case, having these attributes on the points themselves isn't really going to serve us super well because we need to add it to all the new points that we create. So let's go from point to primitive. It doesn't really matter how we're doing this because if you average it, they all have the same attributes, so it doesn't really matter. And now we should have, let's see, we're going to put up normal and up. And so now we should have those saved there. And it's cool because you can actually still see these. It will still visualize those even though they're on the primitive. So that's kind of helpful. We can see those and we see that they're still doing the correct thing. And if we promoted those back down, all would be good. So so that's going to be helpful for us in the long run. So, okay. The next thing we want to do is now we need to kind of work on each of these primitives and kind of, go along each of these primitives and calculate out, how far along, how we want to place these pieces here. And what I thought was kind of interesting was we want to really do something a bit randomized with it, right? I thought it'd be kind of cool to just randomly select bool to an upside down version. I don't know what that means. Bool to an upside down version. Hi, Graham. That was from a while ago, but I'm not sure what you were saying there. But I appreciate the help. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do is give myself, so it's procedural. Yeah, I'm not like the lines at the top. Yeah, I'm not sure what you're saying. It's okay. It's all right. Oh, I see. No tweaking by 0.8. Bool by an upside down version. Oh, yeah. Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Oh, that does make that's interesting. Yeah, you could do that. The top could cause some issues because there's these gaps, but yeah, if you offset it like that, that would certainly work. Let's see here. So yeah, instead of doing this, you would just do a 180 flip of it like that. Polyfill it, match size. Oh, let me turn these off and turn off this. And then we would just set that at its, just give it a little offset so it's sitting like that. Yeah, that would work. That definitely would work. And then we bool it by that. And yeah, that should work. Cool. Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. It's a fun idea. Yeah, there we go. And then, yeah, you've got the scale. You could kind of adjust where it meets up to the wall based on that offset, basically. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Cool idea. I think, yeah, if you just left it by itself upside down, it would be tricky because, yeah, you could possibly run into these little holes. But yeah, no, that's a fun idea. I like that. Cool. The other thing I said before too is that I did it with a cylinder, and then that way you could just kind of adjust the cylinder that's cutting it out, and it's kind of the same thing. I don't know, whatever. There's many ways to do everything. So, I mean, I think technically it's still procedural this way, but yeah, it's, yeah, I see what you're saying. It's less scaling and manipulating and stuff like that. So, cool. Let's see. Okay. So what I'm going to do is give myself, or just ray points to lower mesh maybe and delete this group. Yeah, maybe. Okay. So what I wanted to do was give myself like a group of assets, right? So we're going to just do that here. And this is the copy to points for that tower. So I'm just going to grab this and that. So the corner pieces, I'll just call this select tower. And yeah, so I'm going to do another blast, and we're just going to select. Oh, to tower. I see. Yeah. Yep. The other thing, yeah, well, those are interesting. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. But in that case, I was booleaning it. So yeah, that would, yeah, you could certainly delete them. Yeah, I mean, there's a million ways to do everything. It's always the case in Houdini, isn't it? But yeah, no, those are all good suggestions. Okay, so here I'm going to select the ones that I wanted, and they were these, the wall thin straight. So I'm going to select that, hit enter, and then I'm just going to change this here to say just name star thin straight, like that. And that should give me 3 pieces, I think. Oh, I'm going to delete the non-selected. 4. That's right, 4. So I've got 4 different pieces here that I can use. And so the other thing I had was this align, and I think it's align and distribute. It's kind of interesting. It gives you a sense of what these pieces look like, and you can just say, you know, which pieces you're actually 1,000 ways to make stairs in Houdini. Yep. 100%. Yes. Actually, you know what? I just realized this. I don't really like this one, that it doesn't have these little notches at the top. So I'm actually going to say no to that one for right now. So we'll only use 3 to start with here, and then we can always play around with more of them. So let's see what piece that actually is. So if I select this, and that one is thin straight 3. I think what I can do is, oh geez, I think I can do this. Can I do 01, 02, 04? Is that possible? No. There's a way to do that. There's some sort of syntax. Oh, I think it's maybe underscore. Would that be right? No. That's all right. You know, I'm just going to select each of them and just call it. It's fine. That's fine. So we'll just do thin straight 1, 2, 1. Hello? 2, 4. There we go. Enter. Okay. Perfect. Those are the ones we're going to use for right now. This is just a visualization node, so we don't really need that. I just wanted to get an idea for that. So we're going to say select wall pieces. Now, if I was making this into an HDA, what I would do is I would take this parameter here and basically give it a way to select what piece names you wanted to use for the wall, for example. Just like you would with the tower, we'd promote, have that reference to an element, up at the top, on the UI basically, and just have some way of selecting which pieces you want to use from the FBX, right? So that's what I would do there. In this case, what I want to do is I want to make a dictionary attribute, and I just want to have it link the name and the width together, just so we can have those two things instead of making them in 2 separate like array array values. A dictionary is nice because it kind of keeps those values linked together, so we don't accidentally like sort one of them or do something weird like that. Now in this case we only have 3, so it's not like a huge deal, but it might just be a good idea to understand how that works a little bit. So Let's do that. Let's actually do a let's make a dictionary from this. And for this, I think the easiest way to do it will be by using a detail wrangle. And we're just going to grab, we're just do a quick little for loop on the number of points and then grab each of these, and then we can just write it straight to a dictionary attribute. And that should be fairly easy to do. Because we'll be able to add into the detail, into the attribute each time of the loop, instead of putting that into multiple dictionaries per each point, basically. So yeah, I think that'll be easier to do. Yes. I guess it doesn't really matter. Well, let's do it this way. This is how I did it before, and so I'll just do it this way. Let's just hit escape here. And right, so we need to know the number of well, no, we know the number of points. That's easy to grab. So let's just say it's a for loop. Now I'm wondering if I'm doing this dumb. Sorry, just thinking for a second here if I'm doing this in a stupid way. All right, let's try something a little different here. I don't know if this will work exactly, but this actually might be easier to do. So we'll do it over the points, but we'll write it to a new line of the dictionary each time at the detail level, element. So all right, so I'm just trying to remember how to write I'm just going to pull up the help card because I do need to remember this. Can I write a detail? Let's see here. I'm going to go detail, bring up for the vex function. Just making sure I can do this with a... See if there's any limitations on this. Attribute name. Oh, that's reading attributes. No, this is going to be more tricky to think about. So let's just do it from the detail attribute. We'll do it as a for loop. So we're going to say for int I equals 0. And we're going to say I is less than numpt. And that's numpt is going to give us 3. So we need to do -1. And we'll do I++. That just means so we're basically setting I is equal to 0. We're going to check this each time we do the for loop. And then after each for loop, we're going to iterate I. We're going to add 1 to I. Like so. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the name and the width and put those together into a dictionary. So let's actually just let's grab those real quick. So we'll just say, so we need to select both of those. So we're just going to grab, we're going to say point 0. The string name is going to be name, and the point number is going to be I, because that's the current iteration that we're working on. And we can do this same, oh, sorry, I need to set that to something. String, we'll just call this current name equals point. Then we'll do a float of current width. And then set that equal to the same thing, just with width in there instead. And need a semicolon. And if we do that, that should be good. Now the only thing I am thinking about is just I want to remember the actual dictionary syntax. So I'm going to reopen this and go back to, I think if I just type in dictionary. Get away. Thank you. This is really only Vex has dictionary, so it's pretty easy to search. And see it, Dolia. Thanks for being part of it up at late at night. So let's see here. Actually, this is not what I want to do. I want to look at using expressions, and I can do this here. Let's see. I went past it. There it is. So there's the way we call a dictionary D at name. Just want to see how we set the attribute for that because I'm not seeing it. Oh, right. Okay. So what we're going to do is just trying to remember this. Okay. So if we do D at pieces, and then we do, I think we do this. We set this with current name equals current width. Oh. Yep. Capitalization issues. Did that do it, please? Yes. Wonderful. Okay. So let's take a look at what this did. All right. That is much easier than what I was going to try to do the other way. So basically what I'm doing here is just pulling the current name, current width for each point, throwing those into a dictionary here by setting. So you need, for a dictionary, you need a key and a value. And so the current name is our key. Keys are always strings. And the current width is the value. And those now get set together. If we inspect this, it can be a little easier to see. Why are we only getting 2 there, though? That is weird. Maybe I do just need to do this in numpt. Wasn't thinking of it correctly. Yep, that's right. Okay, so if we inspect this, we can see here, this is what the dictionary sets up for us. So now we can get the width of any of these random things here. So we have the name and the width are now linked together in this value. So I thought this was helpful, kind of a good thing to set up. We'll just say create piece dict, like that. Okay. So now that we're going to need to use that when we're selecting over here which piece we're going to use as we process these individual primitives. So what we can do is we can select, maybe what we'll do is just work with one of these for well, I guess we can just do it on all of them. Doesn't really matter. But we're going to do a primitive wrangle. And link, just connect it in there for right now. This we're going to use a little bit later. But so what we want to do is we want to do do similarly like a for loop over this and give it maybe a certain number of iterations to run on. Now, we could do a while loop, but those can be a little scary because if you don't have the right stop condition, like if the stop condition never happens, it just keeps running forever. And so you can do some stuff to kind of like give that an upper limit of how many times it can run, but we can just give this an upper limit of how many times to run in a for loop. If you want to play around with while loops, you're more than welcome to. I just know that I'll probably type something wrong and explode the system here. So I'm just going to do that, and we're going to call this we'll say piece placing logic. So we'll do this, and let's now take this and we'll start figuring out where these pieces are going to be placed, right? So we have the first piece is going to be, we'll randomly select that one. It's going to be just placed at the spot of 0.0. So that's pretty easy to do. But we need to obviously figure out which of those we're going to select, right? We also need to know the length of these, right? These that we have here, that we have remaining, so that we're not just placing points forever. We want to know what the length of this is. So we do actually need to calculate that again. So we can actually do the convert line again, I think, here. And let me just make sure this doesn't goof anything up here. So we'll just turn these back on, make sure nothing gets goofed up. Nope, looks like everything stays the same. Just want to make sure there's no weird numbers happening. And this is going to compute the rest length. We can throw that into here. There's going to be a rest length for each of these. So that's going to be helpful for us as well, because that'll tell us if we can place the next piece or not, basically. And so okay, so let's start doing some stuff here. So we're going to do the, we're going to set a float. We're going to call, I'll make this a little bigger. Sorry. It's probably a little small. We'll call this current length, and we'll set this equal to f at rest length. And so now that way we're just not manipulating this rest length attribute for these individual primitives. We're just manipulating an attribute or a variable within the vex node here itself and within the wrangle. So that's going to make this a little bit easier. The other thing we're going to want to do is import that dictionary attribute. We actually need to get it over here too as well. So that would be helpful. So let's do that. We'll do a copy attribute or attribute copy. Why do I keep getting that backwards? I don't know why. We'll do this, and we're just going to copy that attribute pieces. Yep, that's what it is. Pieces, and then we'll have that. That's a detail attribute. So we've got that pieces there. Those are the pieces we're going to be working with. So let's do that. Let's get, we'll say dictionary pieces, and we'll get that from detail. And then we're going to use 0 and pieces and 0 again, if I'm not forgetting that, if I'm remembering that correctly. So now we've got our detail dictionary loaded into pieces here, so we can use this and kind of manipulate things as we need to. The other thing we might want to do is know the number of pieces we have, right? Because that's going to be important. We're not actually selecting that here. So at this point, we don't really know how many pieces we have. We could technically write that here, I guess, and copy it over. But at some point, we need to get it into this wrangle anyway. So let's just do that, and we'll just do int num pieces, something like that, and we'll call this. We'll just do this from the length of pieces. So now we should have the number of pieces, the length of pieces, which is the length of that dictionary. So there's 3. We have the actual dictionary of that. And the other thing that we might need to do here is give ourselves a string array of the names of these, because we're going to need to look up those dictionary pieces. So we're just going to get a string array from that. And I believe there is actually a thing here, and it's keys right here. So this keys will actually give you it returns all the keys in a dictionary as an array. So, so here we'll just say string, and we'll say, we'll call it keys, and that will also be keys of pieces. And so just so you know what we're setting up here, why don't we just maybe write some of these out just so we can see what they are. So let's do, and then we'll just, actually, you know what? Sorry, I can just do this. I'll just change these ones up here real quick. So we'll just check this out. I at num pieces, s at keys. And then these will write out for each of these. Now these will obviously be written out on the primitives, but we can still see here we've got number of pieces. We're getting 3 there. And these are the keys, right? So these are just the names. And we can now really easily select between one of those keys just by telling its index. And then from that index, we basically can give an index to this keys. The keys will return one of those strings, and then that can give us the width at the same time. So we can kind of just have those things more easily linked together with just, just with one maybe random number that'll push that out. Hey Esteban, welcome to the stream. What's kicking? We're making some procedural geometry from a cool Polyhaven asset. So we're gonna make make it just a little castle wall builder thing here. Okay, so we've got this set up int num pieces. There we go. String keys, not at keys, but keys. Okay. So what we need to do is figure out a way to randomize these so that we're going to have a different like start value for each of these, because obviously we don't want them to all be the same. And we can just use a random value here. So like if we were going to do something random, we could just do that off of the primitive number. I was actually doing this in a for each loop, and now I'm reconsidering how that's kind of a silly thing to do, especially with this randomization, because we know each primitive will have its own index number, and that will be helpful, or own prim number. It also has an index value, but because I was going to do that originally, and then we were able to fix that, and it's not really an issue anymore. So we didn't really need that index, but it's there regardless. Okay, so let's do, just trying to think here. So if we want to do a, random seed from this, to pick one of those pieces at random to check and see if it has enough length, if it can fit into this next section, we need to really have that happening within the for loop that we're about to create, or a while, whatever you want to do on your own if you want to do that, but within the loop, because then each iteration of the loop, we can use that to also randomly do some other type of math there, and have some different result from it. So yeah, just thinking of what would make sense there to do. Okay, so let's do our for loop here. We're gonna do something really similar to what we did in the other one. Int equals 0. We're gonna say I is less than, and we're gonna say is less than num pieces, and then we're gonna say -1 in this, or no, sorry. No, we want to do this different. We're going to say I is less than, and I'll just make its own parameter for this. We're going to say loop, we'll just call it iterations. So we'll use that. I is less than the number of iterations. And then here we'll just do I++. And there we go. There's that. What is this angry about on me here? Oh, I forgot to type I there. Now what's it angry about? There we go. Okay, so now if we check this out, if we just did I at test equals I. We should see that we're running through this a certain number of times, and that's great. Actually, this would be iterations plus 1, right? Maybe not. Maybe that's right. Anyways, doesn't matter. It's fine. It's going to do what we want it to. It has an iteration limit. Right. No, that's 10 iterations because we've done I. Yeah, that's right. Anyways, all right. So let's do our random seed. So we'll say this is going to be an this is actually going to be our random piece. So we'll do int random piece. And here we can just do random based on the prim number. And that will give us, this is actually going to give us a float right now. So let's just do this f at random piece, and we'll see it without a semicolon. We'll see that this is going to give us a number between 0 and 1. So that's pretty easy. We're going to do a fit 0, 1 on this. And I'm going to pull this over here. Actually, I'm going to open this in the other window. Let's do that. So there's our random piece value there. Okay, cool. So we want to do this with, we want to fit it to 0, 1. So we'll obviously have the lower end at 0, and the upper end will be the num pieces minus 1, because we want it to go between 0 and 2, basically, not 0 and 3. So we need to do 3 minus 1, gives us our upper limit for that. Close the parentheses, apply that. And now it looks like we're getting our random piece number. If we do our int, that will round it to the nearest integer. So now we're getting 1, 0, 1, or 2 out of that. However, now each subsequent iteration will be the exact same. So we want those to obviously on no iterations, it won't give us anything, but we want it to change each time. So why don't we also do another random in here and maybe add those two together and then randomize based on that float? That might be a good idea. Because adding them together, well, we could just add them and then divide by 2. I guess that would be fine too. Anyways, let's try that. So let's do plus another rand based on the I. Oh, maybe I'll do this I plus at. Oh, we could do that. That would actually work. Sorry, I'm just thinking. Would that be any different if we did prim number plus I? No, because that would actually have a very closely repeating pattern. So let's do this. We'll add them together. Plus at prim number like that, and then we should be able to divide that by 2 to still get ourselves a number between 0 and 1. Because we're adding 2 numbers that are between 0 and 1 divided by 2. Yeah, that should work. So let's just do this. Divided by 2. Apply. Oh, what did I miss? I missed a parenthesis somewhere here. Maybe here. Yeah, that's right. And then should this change each time? Yeah, it doesn't feel like there's too much of a pattern there, although we're not getting 2 very often. All right, so let's just try this. Let's see here. I'm gonna go back. Oh, you know what I could do? Maybe just do this. I plus primnum, maybe. How did I learn Vex? Oh, it took me a while. It took me a very long time. And yeah, it was definitely really hard. I actually I've done a video series that walks through Matt Estella's Joy of Vex series, kind of day by day. So if you want to check that out, it was done in January of 2023, so it was a few years ago now. But feel free to go back and take a look at that. People have really found that helpful, and you have documentation and the videos to kind of watch through it. So give it a try, maybe. That could be helpful for you. So, anyways, yeah, it was kind of just a long process of kind of slowly learning it. I think I learned it from like Intagma tutorials, just watching them do it. And then after a while, I was like, I started to get some of the ideas. And like I remember one time I like typed something in before they told me to, and I was like, oh, like I know it now. I think I know this. But yeah, I never knew programming before this, so it was definitely a lot to get a bit outdated. Yeah, it's outdated just time-wise. I don't think Vex has changed at all since then, but yes, it's been around for a little bit. All right, I'm just trying to think of the logic here. Because I feel like I want to add just like a random like big number to this and hit apply, and then yeah, see, then we're going to have these numbers just kind of randomly. The suggestion of, oh, mixed training, nature of X. I see. I didn't see that one. Gotcha. I missed the comment there. Zach was saying, could you use I as the seed for the random function instead, or would that not work? It would definitely work, but what you would see with that is, here, let me just, sorry, no, I'm not messing this up. Okay, so let me just comment this out and I'll show you why that is kind of a little tricky. So let me just copy this down here. And if we did random just as I, like this, now you're going to see that each of these has the exact same random piece, right? And so the problem there is that, you know, you just have this exact same randomization scheme, right? So each time it's going to look for the same first piece, then the same second piece, then the same third piece, same fourth piece. So like it's going to do the same thing each time. So it's going to have really reliable, like really visible, like repetition to it, or like repetition around the sides. So that was why I was trying something like this. But even this has some of that, because what the only thing it's doing is it's randomizing based on these two numbers here. So I think what would be better to do, so like here, if we do this and we watch it, oh, sorry, I didn't apply this. There we go. Apply. If we watch it now, down here in my random piece, it's basically just like scrolling upwards, right? Because we're just basically having each iteration happen one time different on each primitive, because we're adding the primitive number and then this other big number that really isn't doing anything because it's just a little bit extra there. Now I wonder if we did a multiply by something big there, if that would change it, if that would make it less of a noticeable. Yeah, it's less noticeable of a random. That certainly could do it. Yeah, that kind of works. Okay, that's probably fine. So multiplying it by a big enough number will make it so that that pattern is not easily noticeable. So I guess that's fine. That'll work just fine. Okay, cool. So now what we need to do is so that's our random piece. And we actually want it to be an integer. And again, one more thing we need to do here is add int to this. And that will make sure that it's now, actually, let me see. Do we even need that for it? I don't remember. Maybe we didn't need this. Let me just check and see if it yells at us. No, it doesn't. cool. All right, so now we have this random piece, I at random piece. And as we adjust it, you can see here we have an integer. Great, that's working. All right, so let's do, let's grab the random piece from this and let's see what that will look like. Okay, so we want to grab that string value. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, so let's change this here because we don't need this to be a value, or it doesn't need to be an attribute. We can just say int random piece. And now we can say, this will be a string and it'll be, this is kind of in the way, isn't it? We'll say current piece equals, and then we'll say keys, and then we'll do random piece like that. From float to int. Oh, it isn't mad about that. Okay, I didn't hit apply. So let's do this. Oh, right. This also needs to be like this. So this is not happy. So we're going to do int there. And then that. Then hit apply. Okay, cool. And if we do s at current piece, just to see what the string is, now we should see that these are all randomized here. And as we go through the different iterations of it, we're going to get different, different numbers. This is basically just showing us the last iteration, but it's a good way to just kind of see each of those iterations of the for loop. So yeah, so that's randomly selecting those. Great. So now we have the string for that, and we can say, put this back to a string. And now we can get the length of that piece, or the width of that piece. So we can say float current width equals, and then we will do pieces, and then we can just say that string, right? So we can say current piece. And if we'll just do this as an attribute just to see it real quick. We'll hit apply, and there we go. There's our current width from each of those pieces. So we know that those are coming back now because those are linked together with that dictionary. You give it that string name, gives you the width right away. So that's good. So now we have the float for the current width, right? Okay, so we're getting along. We're getting actually pretty close to being able to start adding these pieces in, right? Because we now know what the random first piece we're going to check is. So what we need to do is do an if statement, right? So we need to say if the current width actually, you know what? I'm going to change this because this is actually really funny because I called it length. I'll say remaining width. Something like that. So if the current width is less than the remaining width, or remain width, I guess I could just say remaining. I'm leaving out one letter that's actually causing confusion. So if the current width is less than the remaining width, we know that that piece can fit in that spot, which at this point, all of them should. The current width is basically always going to be less. There's none of these that are more. So as long as that's the case, we can put that piece in, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to set the name of that point to that piece name. So let's do that. We're going to say, let's see, we're going to do set point attrib. And I'm actually going to pull this up because it's always kind of a little tricky to do this without seeing it, I guess. Let's do this. Set point attrib. I think this can be helpful just to kind of see what it is that we're working with here. There we go. So, all right. So we need the geo handle, which is 0, current geometry. The name of the string, which is going to be name. And the point number, which is going to be the current point that we're operating on, which in this case is we need to set because we haven't set that up yet. So let's do that. Let's give ourselves a current point number. So we're going to give ourselves an integer attribute here, say current point. We're going to set that to 0 because it's always going to start with 0. Interesting. No, I'm sorry. That is not going to be correct. Because each of these has its own point number. Okay, this might have been why I was doing it with the for each loop, because sorry. So each of these is going to have their own point numbering situation, right? And so I guess what we need to do is figure out Okay, so what we need to do is figure out the prim point, the lowest prim point number, and we should be able to start with that. And then from there, add new points in. Those will be higher and higher numbered as we add those, but that should be fine. We'll be able to find out what those point numbers are. So the first thing we need to do is select what the prim point is. And I think that's prim point. That. Yes, I think that should work. So for this one, so this will be geometry 0. What prim number we need, that's the current prim number. And then the vertex will just be 0. So this will be 0 prim num, comma 0, because we want the 0, not a point there. All right, so that should give us our current, down here, we didn't have this. Okay, so let's do this just to comment that out, and let's just see this so we can double check that. I at current point. Let's go back to the primitives. The current point of each of these for 0 is going to be 0, 1 is going to be 2, 2 is going to be 4. Yep, that looks exactly right. Perfect. So that's the current point we're operating on. Perfect. So we can just set this back to int current point. We can come back over here and let's pull the help back up. There we go. So the name, the point number. So this is going to be current point like this. The value is going to be the current piece. And this is optional, I think, but I just always like to put in set just so it looks complete. And so now that should set that point attribute on that piece. If we hit apply, let's see here. Yep. And there we go. So now we have those random names added to the points, which is great. And now we need to figure out where our next point's going to go, right? Because the next point is going to start off this loop again. And so what we need to do now is calculate the direction that we need to go to have this go in. But actually, we already have that calculated now that I'm thinking about it. And we can see that from our normal, right? Because our normal is going to be the direction that we're going to be heading in. We're heading in that direction, the normal direction around this curve. So we add one at 2, then we're going to add the next one at in here somewhere. So we need to go along the normal direction to the width of the piece that we just placed down. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do that little bit of math. So we're going to say, let's figure that out. So we're going to have the current width times the normal, which should be, again, since it's a normal value and it's a normalized value, we can just multiply those together, and that will give us a vector of that length, which will then tell us where that next point should go. So that will work pretty well. So what we need to do is we need to grab the, we need to get the current position, which is going to be important. And then we need to get then we need to calculate where that next position is going to be. So let's do that here, not within the if statement. Let's do that here. So we have that. So this can be a vector. It's going to be the current position. We'll set this equal to this could be point. So we're going to pull a point value from current cur PT, the current point. Sorry, that is not right. It should be this 0. Sorry, P, capital P, and then the current point. I'm like thinking ahead of myself here. So that should work. Looks like that's good. That'll give us our current position. And then if we've calculated this. So now if we say, let's see here, we'll do add point. Let's see here. I'm just going to do a little math here and just say vector next position equals current pos plus v at n times current width. So now we're adding these two together, right? So we're taking the current position, adding the current width, adding the normal times the current width to it. So we're taking the current position and adding the normal times the current width. And that should give us what we need. And then we add the point and we just say 0 for the current, for the current geometry. And then we say next pos for this, because that's the next position. And there we go. Now we have another point in here, it looks like, if I'm looking at this correctly. Yep, right there. And that's going to be exactly at the width of this, of that piece that was selected. And that should be happening at each of these, right? So each of these individual pieces now has that width set there, and we have new points created at each of those. So the other thing that we're now noticing is that this new point needs to be the current point. So what we can do here is, as we're adding that point, this add point function actually returns the point number that it's creating as an integer. So if we do this, if we do int current cur pt equals like this will actually put that value. Oh, thanks. This seems pretty straightforward, but yeah, it's just kind of thinking about it one step at a time and kind of going through it. But yeah, so right, so we've got this set up, and now our current point should become the next one down the line. And I believe if we do another one here, nope. Okay, so why did that not work there? Sorry. And we went backwards. That's interesting. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Why did we go backwards on that one? Oh, right. Right. So that's the problem there, actually. We need to set this up here, because we don't want this to be set every time. We want to set this up here, the current position, up in our setup stuff, basically. Up outside of the for loop. Let's just try that, apply that. Right. And now we need to set up the... we need to also say here that that the vector current pos equals next pause. And that should set it up as the as putting that next position in the current position before it loops back up to the top. Nope. Why would that not be doing it? Why would that not do it? To move these around a little bit just so I can read this a little better. It's all the pieces stuff. That's the current position. It's the remaining length. What did I miss here? Vector current position. Oh, the other thing I need to do too, which I don't know why that would matter, but I need to take the remaining width and reduce that because we need to subtract that off of that. So what we'll do is we'll say remaining width. Does that work? Minus equals. That. Oh, right. So this should be like that. Right. Both of these need to be. Oh, that's why I didn't do it, because it's just remaining width. So we'll just do that. Remain width. That's easier. Like this. That'll be easier to figure out. Okay. There we go. I think I was just doing, I was like trying to reinitialize these attributes, and that was what was the problem. So I had int and vector at those and stuff like that. Okay, that actually could be working now. So let's try this and let's see what happens. Now, the interesting thing that you'll see here is that some of these will get right to the end right there, right? And then as we go further here, we get more and more iterations, and it goes basically all the way to the end. Now, what I did was I determined that kind of the easiest way to clean this up, I'll just hit apply, accept, was to just do a blast and just do it by points and just say @name equals and then blank. And that'll take out all of the points that don't have a name on them. And I think now if we do a copy to points, we do that, and we do this based on the piece attribute name, that pretty much does it, except that we didn't promote the... Wait a second. Wait a second. I think the last point didn't get one there. Let's see. Why did 39 not get one there? That's interesting. Oh, maybe because... Okay. Well, anyways, let me just. Oh, right. Because these actually have to flip around the other direction. They're not in the right direction. All right. So let's do. We need to do before we do this blast, we need to bring these over to we need to promote them from the primitive. So let's do that. So let's do an attribute promote. There will actually be something you'll notice is not going to work here. So we'll fix that in a second because I forgot about that. So we're going to go to primitive. We're going to do normal and up. We're going to go to point. And you may have just seen what happened there, but it looks like only some of these are actually working. So that's kind of interesting. And then this instance attribute thing here needs to come over here and rotate them all into place like so. However, we have some things that aren't, that's weird. Why is that doing that? Why is we getting that flicker? Are we not getting the actual piece names? Is that the problem here? Are we copying all of them together? Right. But it is it not in that? All right, so let's do an attribute promote here, and this should get us to a primitive with the name. There we go. Does that work? Hello? Well, how did we lose our names? Is this adding a name attribute or something somewhere here? Don't want to randomize the P scale. What? Why is this getting rid of my name attribute? That's really strange. Okay. That's really weird. Okay. Well, we'll just leave that like that. Did that fix it? Yep. Looks like it did. Okay, great. So now we are not copying them all together at the same time. What you'll see though is that with our attribute promote, we're only getting those individual is name in the cleanup of the instance attribute stop. I didn't see it in there. So that was what I was seeing, but oh, right. That's why. Oh, that's so silly. Because it's, yep, good call. Thank you, Zach. That is exactly what was happening there. That's really strange. I'm just surprised that it would delete random other attributes, but that's fine. Okay. So the reason that this is happening, the reason that only one of them is orienting properly is because our, sorry, have a sneeze. Okay. Nope. No sneeze. Is that when you promote something, the points have to be a vertex in the primitive in order for it to promote to that. So if you look here, we have 39 points, right? But if we look at our vertices, we only have points 0 to 11 that are defined in these. So we need to add those in, and they're going to make really weird geometry. It doesn't really matter because we're only keeping the points anyways, but it's going to make really weirdly connected geometry, but it'll at least allow us to do that pretty easily. So we're just going to go back into this placing logic. I'm going to open this back up, and what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to do an add vertex here. And what does this need? This needs a geometry handle, the index. It needs a primitive number and the point number. So we have the point number, which is current PT now, because we've just written that for the new point. And so let's do that. So it'll be 0 prim num. Okay, so 0 at prim num, and then it will be current PT. because we just wrote that. And if we hit apply, I think anything should happen there. And we should have now a lot more vertices in here. Yep, for sure. And each of these have multiple. So now we hit apply, accept. We come to attribute promote. We will see that before we weren't, I think if we turned that off, there we go. We wouldn't be getting the norm, like some of these just don't get values added to them, right? They're just basically initialized. All these down here are just initialized to 0. And so if we do this and come down here, now all these new points have actual attributes for that. So we blast these. Now all of those will have actual attributes. Do our instancing like so. And now we've got that set up. So that's looking great. And so now the last thing I think that I'm going to do is add in one more little thing that will help with the, with the, what's the word? With this last gap, right? Because we need to add something in here, right? Because nothing is able to actually fit into this little gap at the end here. When we look at our logic, we have these tiny little spaces and nothing can fit in there. So what I think I'm going to do is just, since I know nothing else can fit in there, I'm just going to take the absolute smallest piece. And so now I can just put an else statement in here, right? So if I can just say, actually, you know what? No, sorry. I'm going to do another if statement, and this will only be true in one case, hopefully. So if I say if current width is is greater than the remaining width, the remain width, and we also let me open this up a little larger so we can see this. And the other thing that we want to check is that the number of iterations that we've gone through here, which in this case are 10, if we are on, and we can say I is equal to, oh, you know what? I should change this because this, I'm going to want to use this value again, and I don't want to write that again. So let's take this and we're just going to make this its own thing. So we'll say iterations equals that, just to clean this up a little bit. So we're going to do that there, like so. And then we're going to call it, say, iterations here. So as I is less than iterations. So now if I is equal to iterations minus 1, and the current width is larger than the remaining width, we're going to just put one specific piece in. We're not going to even worry about whatever the random piece we're selecting next is. We're just going to put that smallest piece in there. We know what that is because those are sorted based on their size, right? So let me just look at that in a second and see. I'm just going to change this and hit apply, make sure we're not getting any errors there. Yep, we're not. So if we come back up here to this piece dictionary setup, so that should be piece, the first, basically, the very first of those. So if we just say key 0, right? So instead of doing this, we're just going to say, we'll say current piece equals keys 0, because this is going to be what we need, what we're getting from there. It doesn't matter what the width is. It doesn't matter anything like that. We're just going to set it to that very the very smallest piece that we have, basically, because that's the 0th piece. And then we are going to say, We're going to do the same thing here where we're going to set the point attribute with the current piece, current point. That should all work. We don't need to add another point or anything like that to it, because that's the last point in this kind of chain, so that should be fine. So that set point attribute should work. Let's hit apply here, and let's see what happens. And sure enough, we do have 39. That should be straight 0, 1. Does that make sense? Sorry, I just want to make sure that makes sense. Doesn't make sense. Why is that the case? Let me see here. Oh, interesting. Okay. So why did it do it that way? Huh. I sorted them, deleted them. Why did it do it that way? That's really interesting. Oh, because I think it added it. No, I don't know. I don't know why I did it that way. Okay, that's fine. We can just do it based on the last one. That's no big deal. So we can just say num pieces. That's fine. Can we do this? Num pieces -1. Will that work? Let's see. No, it doesn't like that. Num pieces -1. Maybe. Maybe. Let's see. Because this should be straight 4. Yep, that should be right. And let's just visualize that and see if that's working properly. So let's turn on name, and we will change this into a marker, and we can just go in here and check and make sure. So that's straight 04. This is then straight 04. That's the smallest one every time. That's looking right. Straight 04. Okay, great. That looks like that is working. So now if we take this, check that off. Apply, accept. There we go. Now it is sticking through, obviously. And what you could do is you could obviously manipulate this and continue to go along with it and kind of create this as you would see fit. But that should more or less do the trick. Now, what I would say for this is that you do actually want to adjust you don't want to output the actual geometry. You would want to just output this point cloud here, right? So you'd actually probably want this would just be a preview basically. If you were doing this like to something like Unreal. So this would be a preview, and then you would take your let's see here. We would take probably this as well here. Yeah, you would just have to basically output a point cloud, more or less. So this instance attribute here would work fine. You give you all your orientation and scale and things like that. And then the same, could we actually do that from here? Let me just see if we, yeah, that would actually probably work as well. You could do something like that. Now, in this case, we don't have the normals and stuff like that, but you could certainly apply the normals and the ups and all that kind of stuff, and then just output both of these and just say this is going to be this is going to be your point cloud. And there it is, basically. That would do the trick, and we should be able to take this preview, and if we work on this curve here, we should be able to just take these, move them around, and have it add pieces in as needed. Now why it's jumping around like that, I do not know, but it is weird. That's very weird. I don't want this selector on. Why is this selector on? That is so weird. go away. But yeah, it looks like we got this more or less working. And there we go. That might be a bug report right there. I do not like that. That is goofy. That works, but yeah. So it looks like these should all be working now, and it's cool because we're basically just going with. Oh, interesting. Oh, right. Because we don't have enough iterations on that. So this is where something like a while loop would become better for you because you just need to up the number of iterations here to like 15 or something, and then that'll be fine. But this is where something like a while loop would be better, where you could set the iterations at like 50 and then just let it go until that's done. And so that would be a little more efficient here, and you could just do Tom, get out of here. You're just jumping in with your uncompiled loop comments. Yes, it should be a compiled loop. Tom is right, but it's literally doing nothing. It's just doing a quick for each on what is this even doing? I can't even remember now. On the pieces. It's doing a couple pieces there. It's not much. It's not much, Tom. I actually did this previously and did this within a for each loop there. So I'm now going to have to change the way I set that one up because I don't want it to be within a for each loop because that would be slower for probably no reason. So anyways, yes, it's an uncompiled loop, but Tom, you can compile it. You could throw that up on the Discord server. Look at that. How about that for a transition? But yeah, so if you want to be on the Discord server, there's an invite at the website, HoudiniHangout.com. You can find information about the stream, blah, blah, blah there, like and subscribe. Houdini Hangouts it was just my idea. I came up with the idea at the end of 2021 and started doing it. And then shortly thereafter found myself with a job at Side Effects. So yeah, it was pretty crazy. Very interesting year, but it was just my own idea and still is just me doing it. There's literally nothing to do with my work stuff, but anyways, but yeah, this is, hopefully this is kind of a cool little thing. Obviously, it's funny. We said this is an HDA. I haven't even turned this into an HDA, but to turn it into an HDA is quite simple. You would just do something like, let's see here. I probably would do this, select all these. We can turn this into a subnet. Hey, I got some errors. Cool. Oh, cool. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. First time I ever heard of Houdini. Yeah. Castle walls breaking. That sounds right. That definitely sounds right. Let's just do this as the output. There we go. So we can see that up at this level. Oh, wait a second. There's another output node? Oh, up here. I see. I was like, wait a second. Yeah, so that's output 0. Wait a second. This is output 0. So this will be our main output. Then we'll do output 1 here. Here we go. And so that would do it. We'd have 2 outputs and we could just see one of those. Okay, so then if we did this and we said create a digital asset, this is really nice now. We have this really nice... Yeah, Maitland, I was in the same boat when I first saw Houdini. I was like, oh yeah, I like everything that's going on here. So here's where we would do this now. You probably want to save this actually to somewhere like on your own drive somewhere where it's like you could use it again if it was something you want to use again. I'm going to save it to the current project. So I'm going to save to hip.hda directory. And this whole workflow naming thing is just so nice because what I can do now is I can name this castle builder, I guess, whatever. And that will now save it into this digital assets submenu. It names it all correctly. It makes a nice HDA file for me. I hit create. It's going to do its magic, blah, blah, blah. Why do I keep getting that? That's really annoying. And then it brings this up where it now has its own, type properties. What this is basically doing is this is where we would set up all of our parameters and things like that for it. Right now, it doesn't have any parameters. Hey, welcome to the stream. We're just about done, but you can always, if you're on YouTube, you can always rewind it and keep watch from the beginning if you want to. But yeah, welcome, Pyrrhic. Do with PDG now. Not right now. It's getting late, so I'm gonna be. We're getting to the end here, but the other thing, obviously, now that I'm thinking of this, we'd want to do as well is this curve should come up above this. So let's just do that real quick too. So we'll do type properties. We'll go back to the basic here and we'll say maximum inputs are 2. And the minimum inputs are going to be 2 because we will need to have both of them. So there's our 2 inputs and our 2 outputs. We'll just move those around a little bit. And we have a second input here, and that is going to wire in here. And I'm just going to take this curve, put it up at the top, up here. So there's our file. Here's our curve. What's erroring on us here? Nothing. Hopefully nothing now. Yep. 2001, 2021. Yeah, I do too. Although that just tells you how old I am because I'm meeting more and more people these days that are like, oh yeah, I wasn't alive in 2001. And I'm like, and you're in college now? That's weird. That's very strange to me. Anyways, so this, we can save the node type here, right click, save node type. You can also match the current definition. That'll make sure that it gets back to its state here. And yeah, so this would now be an HDA. It's saved in a folder right next to our hip. There's an HDA. Here's the HDA itself, Peter Castle Builder. And yeah, so now this is an HDA that you could load in other programs. And if you feed it in a curve and the FBX file like this, that was in 2011. The castle wall is breaking. Okay, I'm like, wait a second. No, I think I said I don't know. I'm losing track of what days I'm saying now. I first learned of Houdini in 2015, or at least properly learned what Houdini was. I think I opened Houdini up once before that, and it was like, what is this? I have no idea what's happening. So yeah, so this is basically the setup. You could certainly tweak this and play around with it a bit more, and there's other things obviously that could be done here, like maybe centering this a little bit better along this line, or things like that. There's also those kind of cool like these other parts. This should yes, it definitely should all be Apex, Tom. You're right. You're 100% correct. So we do it all just Apex, and then, I mean, hey man, if you want to do it in Apex, I mean, probably take you like an hour, but yeah, feel free. I mean, files will be available, so feel free. But not me. I am not Mr. Apex yet. And yeah. But yeah, you could also take this and play around with it, make something, you could expand on it, right? Because that's kind of the idea, right? You start with something, at least in my mind, start with something that's kind of at a base level of operation, and then keep adding features to it, right? Like, okay, I need something that's going to figure out corners differently. Like maybe I don't want these towers in every corner. Maybe I do want to actually add these corners where there's right angles, and have this tower at maybe four of the main corners, like 4 90-degree corners will have towers, and then other 90 degrees will have these types of elements on them. And you could do that for sure. There's also thick walls that you could add and thin walls, and then there's a transition between the two right here. So there's lots of stuff that you could do. You could pull up, you could have You could have the, you could actually keep the line maybe more highly sampled, or have bounding geometry that would actually define different things. Maybe like, oh, if the next point falls within this region, have the gate or whatever, right? We don't have any gates in our castle, but that's okay for right now. But maybe have a place where you would have a certain bounding geometry that would define, like, when you hit this, if you're adding a point in this space, there should be a gate, and then move on to the next one or whatever. So some of those types of things, you could certainly take this and add to it and play around with it, whatever. But yeah, so that's I think where we're going to end the stream for tonight. Hopefully you got something out of it. So it's a little bit longer than usual, but I think it's fun, and you get kind of a sense for how at least I think about stuff, I guess. And maybe that'll help you, better, think about building assets and things like that. When you're going around to make something. So yeah, cool. Jump all over the place. That is really annoying. Great. Yeah, lots of X, some dictionaries to throw in for good measure, stuff that people don't use all that often, but why not? So I think that, like I said, that's where we're going to end it for this evening. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to just throw that up right now. I meant to do this. There we go. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And I've said, I've done some stuff quasi similar to this before. It was more based on blocks of land and then bullying those lands away until you had a city block like filled with buildings. That was much, much more difficult. That took me like weeks to do. Oh, hey, Shafiq. Thanks, man. But yeah, so hopefully this will just give you some ideas, and you could certainly take this and continue playing around with it. Maybe you can actually take those point outputs and bring those over on. Yeah, the chat is delayed for sure. Yes. Unfortunately, that's just the case of the internet. And I'm restreaming it, and I'm doing a few other things. So yeah, it's just, yes, there is definitely delay. Anyways, yeah, so thank you guys all for joining, and I really appreciate all the comments and hearing, your guys' ideas, except for Tom's ideas they're no good. They're bad ideas. Apex. No, Tom, I don't appreciate, just kidding. Yeah. So thanks everybody for joining, and yeah, we'll see you probably next week, as long as everything continues along looking good, I guess. I don't know, as long as I'm up for it. So that's it for tonight. So everybody have a good one, and I'll see you next week. Bye everybody.